Good evening, everyone. On behalf of agricultureinformation.com, I welcome Mr. Raghava T, and he will speak on the topic digital traceability and sustainability in agriculture, empowering supply chains and FPOs through technology. I now request the speaker to begin.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the information. Right. Hi, everyone. Today, I think I'll be talking about digital traceability and sustainability in agriculture. Right? So let me just give you my background. So where do I come from and how TraceX technologies, where we try to enable the supply chains with the traceable applications. Right? So TraceX is a Bangalore-based startup company, a 6-year-old company. Right? And we started work on creating the supply chains applications so that we could give farm to fork traceability scenarios. And why does this needed? I think I try to discover more about in further coming slides. And how does this really need to help farmers, right? So we've been saying that India runs with a what we call farmer as its backbone, right? And how and what digital technologies can really enable that to be a real vision from a real context over there, right? So I work in the TraceX technology as a chief scientist and the majorly as a project manager for various traceable and supply chain solutions. Right? So it's a small introductory about me. Right? So now we'll get into the overall topic. How does it really help farmer and FPOs to get to the up to the mark of the new era, right, which is going on in agriculture, right? That's what we call it as digital innovation. Yeah, and then moving on to the next slide. So, what really inherit from an agriculture scenario? Right? So we always said agriculture just gives us a food, right? So we never thought about anything else other than the food, right? And our agriculture ministry also said that we have so and so storages in warehouses across the country, right? But that never thought about there will be something that would really be changing in the climate, changing in our lifestyles, right? That atmosphere will bring it out without our knowledge, right? So that is where our old question needs to be restructured to asking where is this food coming from, right? And who is producing it out? So is it sustainable, right? Or where the buyers who is buying it out and selling it to us, right? Are they really catering for all of these informations? Are they really taking care about our ecosystem, right? Can farmer who is a producer of the commodity be benefited for it, right? So this is the new generation of questions that we need to ask ourselves, ask our system, ask our supply chain, right? So until we don't ask this, we will never be able to establish a sustainable ecosystem where we could live for the next generations to come over there on it, right? So this is where I think we should really be more intriguing to our supply chains and an agriculture scenario, right? Then moving on to it, right? Oh, sorry. Why agriculture is changing? Right? So yes, we all know that we need to ask a new question: where, how, and when my commodities or food is produced. What is really changing in agriculture? Right? Main change that we see in the what called agriculture is climate change. Not just a what called agriculture, even our atmosphere in the urban cities or in the rural geographies. Climate patterns are changing. Right? So when I say climate patterns are changing, rainfalls are varying out. They have never used to come on the what I call June as in the decades back. Today we are in August. We don't see the rains that is sufficient enough to produce the food, which means that we don't have a food safety at that level, right? And now food safety is the other concern. But at the same time, we being a global economy, reaching to the third level, we all are seeing we need to export our food commodities, produces, right? And the regulations are not that just easy to export it out. They are becoming tightening every day and day as the day proceeds. So each of the countries have their own regulations, tightening upon the export regulations that is bought from the developing nations, right? So there is a change, a lot of change there. And now the consumers who were used to buy the what I call commodity available in the market, open market, without any questions. Now they seek for something where, when, and how the things is coming to their shelves, right? So that's another change that is happening it out in the business scenario. And apart from that, the carbon, so which is really what I call contributing to the climate changes, right? Now it's so now the carbon has really turned into another new market where it could really give a revenue to the farmer as well as to the what I call and good ecosystem for other consumers, right? So hence there's a new change that has come into a market. So that's called a carbon market. Other trending scenarios, what I see is the sustainable finance, right? The big supply chains like Amazon's or like the Reliance or like the ITC, right? So they all are looking at out because they're a big contributor of what I call a carbon or the climate change, right? Hence, they are looking it out for a sustainable mode, and they're also to their CSR projects or to the what I call supply chain modification funds, right? So they are trying to provision that for finance to the farmer and the farmer groups so that they can go towards sustainable practices, right? This is a new change that is coming up in agriculture, right? And overall, right, the biodiversity plays a major role. And when I say biodiversity and biodiversity conservation, right, if there is an insect on the agricultural land, then my producers are going to flourish, right? Are going to really have a lot of biodiversity and chemically my food is going to be more stronger and making me more stronger. Right? So maybe you will feel that, oh, a pest in my whatever farm field would reduce the yield of a farmer, right? Yes, it is going to reduce the whatever yield of a farmer, but it is the other way, it is going to increase the composition of the farmer produce, right? Which is going to be a more immune and more efficient for your calories. So that way, this is the change that is bringing it out in agriculture. How do we need to adapt to this? So the faster the adaptation needs something or the other thing that can enable all of this adaptation. That is nothing but a technology, right? Hence, without sorry, right. And so, what is that? The new values that a farm and farm data can produce. Right? So, traditional agriculture used to have an yield, production, and price. These are three things that any farmer or any farming community or any trader or a mandi agents would look for. Right? But this is not no more the same old way we need to focus it out anymore. Right? As I said, the change in the agriculture is already happening. Then we have to change our values. Right? The modern agriculture has to be more intuitive, more questioning, more data driven. Right? So where are those data and what type of data are we looking at out there? So one is your production, which location the production is happening at. By what practices the farmer is producing this particular crops and commodities? Is he keeping his soil health up to the mark, or is he deteriorating the soil health and producing too much of yield by just loading the fertilizer? And we always know that agriculture is always related not just to a production, it is also related to a water usage. None of the seed will germinate without the soaking the seeds in a water. So it starts at the soaking of a seed and the germination, then the flowering, then the biomass, and then the crop yielding to it. From the sowing till the harvest, water is the necessary and mandate for any crop to be cultivated. How is a farmer utilizing that? So there is always said that traditional farmer, when he is growing in my paddy, he uses to produce 1 kg of what I call rice. He uses hundreds of tons of what I call water. Right? Does it really still needs the same water usage? Have we improved our research on the water usages? Yes, there are more what I call advanced research that has happened out on it. How do we rely on it? How do we get those data from the different sources? Right? So that is where we need to bring the data to a one point of contact, right? One point where we can really drive those data and make a decisions. And there are others also: carbon, biodiversity, certifications, traceability. There's all the modern agricultural data points that really drives the agriculture. Right? And how does the traceability get established with all of this data? Right? So is my traceability available at quicker point, or does it really needs a lot of time to do that? Yes, in the traditional scenarios, it used to be on all the paper-based, right? And as soon as the produce leaves the what I call farm location, it used to vanish, right? But digital traceability is not that. That's a new moment that really a product brings along with it, carries the what I call audit logs, data logs along with it as it keeps moving on from plot to a plate level. Right? Where it starts at the farm level, and then the cultivation practices happens, harvest happens. That's a new transaction happens out on the digital platform, and it moves to the mandi agents, procurement, e-mandis, right? From there, it just goes to a processing centers. It gets processed and gets into a new refined package, right? And once the packaging happens out at different SKUs levels, it could be a 1 gram package to the 1,000 grams package, right? Or it could be a tons of packages that happen from, right? Those all gets exported, or even it goes to a domestic consumption, retail, right? And consumer consumes those. Huh? So this is where a benefit. The transparency has to be established. A digital technology can enable that transparency. So if someone has to call that back, right, when a government says that, oh, some packet of what I call noodles, right, that was maybe I think you would have seen or heard those cases of Nestle batches have been recalled from the market, right? So those type of recallings becomes an easy process, right? So it was a very difficult for what I call food department to go to those each supermarket where Nestle's benchmarks were low, right? They had to call that out back and then withdraw those packets from the various supermarkets and centers, right? So those were very challenging for them, right? With the papers and pens of what I call distributions, managements, everything. But if it was on a digital platform, it would have been easy. They could have traced back to the batch. Then they would have said, oh, this is the supermarket shelves that has this particular batch. Please recall those products back to the manufacturer's site where it could be disposed. Right? So that becomes an easier process with all our digital traceability. Right? Quality controls becomes the better scenario, right? They could retain all their certificates of qualities on the batch level scenarios. And farmer, when he produces the traceability, he has a more credibility of selling it at premium price to the buyers. So it's a one way where a farmer makes his identity in the society. Right? Today we know that there are lakhs and crores of farmers who are supporting in Indian consumption, right? But their recognition is very less, right? But they don't have any what I call recognition beyond their farms, right? So, but traceability can establish those recognitions, bring a credibility to their profiles. They can build their portfolios. What a corporate career making person has it. A similar way they could really make those things. Right? This is where the power of technology and digital traceability plays a role. And moving further, right, from farm records to digital identity, right? I was seeing there was various data points that comes into from paper to the digital assets. Right? What were those records? Right? It could be a GPS boundaries. When I say GPS boundaries, it's a geo coordinate. So maybe you all know that we use a Google map on day-to-day basis, right? So any point on the earth has a geo-coordinate to it. A similar way, a farmer farm boundaries or production boundaries will have their own or boundaries over there, right? So you could really map those boundaries with multiple coordinates, which we call it as polygons, right? And these polygons or the boundaries could be linked to the farmer profile, right? The farmer profile could be a unique ID with a QR code, right? We all our Aadhaar, we have all our Aadhaar unique IDs. Similarly, a digital platform provides a unique IDs for these farmers. Or it could also be linked to the Aadhaar IDs if there is a consent from the farmer, right? And if he gives a consent, yes, his Aadhaar number could be linked to the farmer profile for his commodities and scenarios. And what would happen after all of these farms and farmer boundaries are marked, right? The crop could be marked out, right? So when I say crop marking or a crop history, so as of that I am in the current Kharif season. Kharif, when I say it's a rainy season, right? In Indian context. So which spans between June, July, August, September, and then October, right? So this is the months where farmers start sowing it out, what are called prepares his lands for sowing the seeds, right? And planting the planting materials, right? Those are the what are called activity that he carries out. So where does he manage it out? Currently, in a traditional way, he manages all on the go, right? Today I have to spray this, I have to sow this, that's it. No records, nothing remains with it. But as soon as the digital system comes into a picture, he keeps on adding those data points to the particular crop profiles, right? That is where the logs and scenarios becomes available for a digital evaluations. And moreover, India is what I call growing in a space sector, right? So this is where a multi-sector what I call evolution of any country would really help each one of them to grow further and further, right? India being exploring its more space what I call boundaries, it has now more better satellites, right? Which could monitor these climatic changes, monitor the agricultural scenarios, right? Maybe if we just go to an agriculture website, right, which agriculture ministry updates is on regular basis, right? Every year or every season, they keep on updating the what I call how much of crops have been sown on the ground, right? How much of crops we are estimating it out for the season, right? So these all used to come through our agriculture offices, right? But now with the help of space agency like in ISRO, right? So it tries to map through on digital what I call images, right? The satellite that goes around the Earth on prescribed what I call time part, tries to capture many images, analyzes those images, and then gives their monitoring services, right? So those way I think governments, any agencies which are doing the large scale agriculture projects could rely on it. This is where one more digital record could come from, right? And suppose, right, the land preparation, machineries, drones, tractors, which all are now getting integrated into a digital system, right? Where are they working? How are they working, right? So those are really be one of the digital identities that we could really identify. So all of these informations, right, could get into one single QR code, what you see on your SKUs or the final finished goods on your shelf of supermarkets or any of the markets, right? This QR code drives a lot of information that goes beyond your what I call visibility, right? And that visibility is what a digital identity is all about. Right? So what is those technologies that is powering this agriculture, right? So mobile apps, I think India with 140 a crore of population, right? 80% of its population uses the digital what are called smart applications now or devices, right? And each one of them carries these smart apps for mobile, right? So this is where it becomes the entry point for data capturization, data digital identities that one can establish it out, right? GIS mapping, as I was saying, satellite imageries are improving it out, and satellite communications are improving it out. how farm boundaries could be very easily identified. This is the technology where it could really be utilized. Satellite monitoring, QR code for a consumer transparency. Most of the QR codes that is on market that's available are app independent things, right? So you could use your mobile phone QR scanner app and start browsing through the information there. It doesn't depend upon any subscribed applications to explore more. And cloud computing is another technology that powers data storage, right? Data storage has become really an important scenario. And with scalable models, right, this cloud computing really helps a lot of and huge tons of gigabytes of data to be stored at easy scenario. With all of this, I think we all talk about an AI, right? Artificial intelligence. This is not just in your WhatsApp, not just in your emails, not just in your day-to-day things. It's also entering into an agricultural market, right? What it really just gives a prediction for risk. What are the risks that exist in agriculture? One is a pest, another is a disease, other is a drought, other is a flood, right? Or other one is if I'm a new farmer, right? So I have no idea. So where to start from cultivation of any particular crops? So maybe I see it's a potato, or it could be a tomato, right? How do I start with it? What do I need to care for it to have a right and better yield for a tomato, right? So AI is where it really helps you a lot, right? AI comes with more prescribed informations from the authenticated KVKs or the what you call agriculture departments of respective geographies, right? If you are based in the north of India, or if you're based in south of India, right? There are specific agricultural departments, agricultural universities who are doing research on geographic specific informations. They are storing a lot of data in their databases. Those information can be drawn by an AI, and then best recommendations could be possibly given to each farmer at the right time, right? So these are technologies that is coming up there, right? And the other important thing is the blockchain, right? Everyone is saying, oh, I'm storing those data, I will store this data. Where is the trust? How do someone trust the data, right? So the trust has been born in the name of a blockchain technology, right? The blockchain technology is that where it really stores the data with a consensus from the stakeholders involved in the supply chain, right? And it's a shared ledger. It's not that as soon as one particular stakeholder adds the data, it gets distributed into a multiple what you call ledgers of each stakeholders, so that each one knows when one particular records get blocked into a chains, right? And he has the consent to move or not to move this values. It will help someone to know that yes, particular action has happened out with his consensus, right? So that is the one thing. And moreover, IoT, right? So we all have the sensors knowingly or unknowingly in our day-to-day lives, right? It could be in the street lights, it could be in the door openings, right? So the now IoT sensors are also moving into an agriculture scenarios where it could sense the what I call drying the soils, the moisture sensors that is hooked into the soil layer. It can sense the moisture in the soil and then trigger the water irrigations on the ground, right? Or it could be a solar panels connected to your water pumps. So you don't need to rely on it as soon as the sun arises in the sky, right? The solar panel gets charged and the water pumps get started at all. You don't need to rely on the power grids to anymore to pump the water to your farms. Right? So there are various other monitoring IoT devices that has entered into agriculture. The one IoT thing is cold storages, right? Cold storages is what is really retaining the whole agricultural commodities. Maybe I would say 50% of your agricultural commodities relies on the cold storage, and it's really what we call transportation or distributions across the markets, right? So this cold storage uses a lot of sensing devices to maintain its what we call right temperature and bring the shelf life of commodities to the right evaluations, right? So there's a technology that is powering agriculture over there, right? And now I will take you to the real projects that we have been part of what are called many supply chains, right? So TraceX, as I said, being a 6-year-old company, have already what are called piloted, implemented, right? And executed successful case studies across the commodities. To name a few, I'm just giving you over here, right? It could be a coffee, it could be an apple, it could be a cotton, spice, or a sandalwood, right? So the list goes on, right? But so the major thing that happens out here, the TraceX is a traceability, right? So we just gave each commodity, each supply chain, and applications that could be utilized by each stakeholder. So it could be at a ground level, it could be at a managerial level, or it could be the management level, right? So for all the three stakeholders, they have their own role-based access to the applications, right? So each one of them contribute their responsibilities, their ownerships, right? The data that they are accountable to feed into our system. So that is where each one of them start feeding the data into the application, and application makes its background algorithm calculations, tries to give managerial context of what is happening on the ground, and the overall project-wise scenarios to the management things. Right? So here it could be one way. I think what I'll deal with is an Apple, right? I think Apple, we all consume it out. So we know in the market, we get a lot of apples, right? The varieties on the ground. Right? But the apple, what I'm talking today is an Kashmir, an Indian apple, right? So on the market shelf, you'll get throughout the year. So varied export or imported apple to consume, right? But an Indian Kashmir apple is only available in a season-based scenario, right? Why is it? Because we don't have sufficient infrastructure. When I say sufficient infrastructure, it could be a cold storages, right? When US, who could sell their Washington apple throughout the year, right? New Zealand can sell their galas throughout the year without this what we call disrupting their supply chains. But in Indian apple, Kashmir apple doesn't able to perform that throughout the year season what I call sales. This could be of various reasons, what I was trying to say, right? One is we don't have a overview of how many farmers on the ground, what is his productions, what way he is producing it out, right? And is he able to store that particular what I call huge volume of commodity, what he has produced, into a cold storage and release season by season throughout the year, right? So that is where the most challenges lies, right? So we being a what called digital technology enablers, we have piloted a project with the two Kashmir FPOs, farmer producer company, right? One is Kandi farmer producer company, which is in Baramulla, right? And the other one was Kashmir Apple, which is in Pulwama of Kashmir, right? So these are two FPOs which we worked with them, right? Enabling the technology for them to analyze their ecosystem, right? And the supply chain, right? It was from the base level where we mapped the farmer, we mapped their farms, geo boundaries are being marked, and then we tracked their practices. So I think for a surprising scenario is that the climate change, as I was talking there, so will also influence the production cultivations of the farm, right? The same farmer who what I call utilized 5 pesticide practices in a season, right? Due to the pest incidents or to the disease incidents, right? So he has to use one or more additional what I call sprays on, right? Maybe the previous season when he experienced those particular challenges, he has utilized what about one more dose of pesticides onto the apple what he has produced. That raises the concerns. That raises the what I call eyebrows of the whole supply chain, right? Now for the buyers or the consumers. even for the government to be thought into it, where is my input that is produced in the market is going in the what I call agricultural lands, right? So this is where the decisions, the key points that we derived out of this pilot. The season he has utilized 2 more rounds of sprays to control the pest. So due to heavy rains, he could have used more of fertilizers, right? Dosage. So this is where FPO was able to gain the insight, right? So now they have to know that if my farmer, due to this climate change scenario, has to use an excess of pesticide or the fertilizer, then I have to procure the next season the sufficient amount in my stocks to cater for that climate change or impact to be mitigated, right? Or now get to agricultural departments. Ask them, is there any other sustainable way where I can control these pest incidents which has occurred in the previous season, but can I mitigate in the future scenarios, right? So this is where our digital technology was able to help them out, right? To give an insight to it, right? So I'll take you through these other things, the cotton, spice, and sandalwood. It's also in a what I call export scenarios where people do a sustainable practices, score their sustainable practices, then build a scoring matrix to it, and then supply those reports to their buyers. Then the supplier gets satisfied with their export quality things. Then premium buying. So the digital traceability has established the premium buying of things. Going into a deep dive of an Apple scenarios. So what was before and what was after the scenarios, right? So manual, scattered, sales registers, there were nothing as such. No inventory on the FPO side. Little traceability. As soon as the produce left the FPO, they have no clue where it is going, right? And if there are any issues in the dispatches, they have no idea which batch was the issue that has caused out for them, right? This was the before. After we implementation traceability, right? How was that it really helped them out? One is they know how much of inventory I own it on, how many buyers are there, did this buyer put me demand for next season or for the current season, what is the demand that they have placed it on, how can I cater for it, right? So stocks to dispatch, that's a very important thing I have. Coming to traceability, so having the traceability, I think is in front of you. There is a QR code for a particular batches, what I'm trying to share you on the screen, right? And as soon as you scan this, right? So someone will be able to know that what was the produce a farmer has grown it out. There are pictures to it, growing it out to the batches, the genealogy of it. There is a farmer profile established over there. You'll get to know who is the farmer, how do he look like, right? Today we don't know the farmer produce, right? Who is that? But my traceability gives that particular profiling, highlighting of the scenarios. Yeah, of Pulwama or Baramulla, this apple was grown, right? So I will be able to give my feedback to it. As a consumer who is buying the apple in the winter season, right? I'll be able to send whatever information saying thank you for the farm, right? So this is the capability of a digital technology that helps all the stakeholders from the farm till the scenarios, right? So I'll be just taking out to the next level. So the other digital traceability in action, so what really happens it out, right? Farmer registration, farm mapping, capture a crop, record practice, harvest, processing. And this is a one what I call paddy seed, what you are trying to see over here. So this is another use case where we did a what I call the pilot with the Telangana government, right? Where we were able to track the seed producing from the seed companies and sold to the farmers, right? So farmer also needs a genuine seeds for his next cultivation, right? He should not be cheated on, right? So if a farmer is being cheated with a what I call counterfeit seeds or unproductive seeds, he just buys it out for thousands of rupees, sows it out, but never germinates. So those all is the cases. Hence, government is putting in a lot of investment to make sure that farmer receives the genuine seeds where it germinates, and he will result in the estimated production, what they are consuming it out to establish the food safety in the country, right? To establish a food safety, I think seed industry is a major industry that needs to be tracked and traced at every level, right? So this is where digital traceability plays a major role into it. Right? Why FPO should adopt digital system? Right? Yes, I think you would have heard a lot that government, central government is trying to promote cooperative what call movements, right? So they have been bringing a large and larger what call cooperative farmer community, right? I think you would have heard there's a larger group of cooperatives in the Gujarat sector, right? There's also a cooperative movements happening it out in Madhya Pradesh, and Karnataka also has a certain extent of it, and even Tamil Nadu has a larger sector of it. And even for the matter, I think many of the what are called uh, trusts, right? So something like Sadhgurus or even for any of the matas, right? So matas and organizations, right? Trusts have been helping these FPOs to uh, organize themselves to bring their what are called farm management, right, to a one platform where they could really do a deal with the buyers, right? Uh, a direct what we call sales transaction from a big organization, right, will be a very a tedious job, right? Hence, big organizations like FMGC, like structures like NITC, Reliance, or the Tatas, right? Tata Consumers, right? So those guys would really ideally like to do with the farmer organization than the single individual farmers, right? So that they will try to associate with the FPOs who has the legal framework to sell the commodities to any big organizations. That is where FPO, when they are trying to do the sales scenarios, they need to have a structure. They need to have the supporting system. That is nothing but a digital system. Right? So in the market, you will get number of ERP, account management tools, but they don't establish the traceability to them, right? So establishing the digital inventories and the traceabilities would always prove your compliances to the big markets so that they can buy the product at a premium price, or you can sell at a premium price. You could very authentically say also standards, right? I don't have any pesticide residues, or I don't sell it out with a lot of pests and diseases in my commodities, right? Which could really get rotten very fast, right? But I can also give you a best quality thing, but give me a best price to it, right? At the same time, I also have what I call compliances managed, right? So that is a very important thing, and FPO should adopt the digital systems, right? And we have been also trying to make sure that our digital system will not be an overhead onto the FPOs things. FPO have been supported by a government, something like a NABARD, which helps them financially for at least the 2 to 3 years till they could earn their own revenues to pay for the systems. That is very important. When coming to the next level, the sustainability. So climate change is obviously not in our control, right? So sustainability, which we have not ever thought about it in earlier things. Maybe we thought, but we didn't think at the global levels. Maybe in the 1947 or 1960s, right? When a green revolution happened, it was all just to grow more, right? Nothing more than that. So, but today it is not the same way that we need to rethink about it, right? So we have to rethink on the same strategies. Do we need to add more on it? Can I grow something better than a more? So does it better really helps me to what I call feed my country with valuable products? So how do I know that? Do I need to measure that better? How do I measure that's better? Right? That is a very important thing. So to have that better, measurement is very important. Measurement, where do you bring it out? Measurement on pen and paper takes a lot of time, right? Still, the older way of measuring will take a lot of people, lot of time, and then by the time I finish a measurement, my 5-year plan would have already been closed, right? Or that is where we have been doing it out, right? So we used to put out every 5-year plan and then try to buy Niti Aayog and then try to improve our progress on the global level, right? But now 5 years is not the scale that we need to have it out anymore, right? With the digital things that is going for faster and more adaptive, right? I could really access that, assess that, visualize that in a better way and in a shorter span of time, right? Within my 5 year Niti Aayog plan, I could have more visibility. Every year I could have more visibility. I could improve my what I call visibilities and the implementation on the ground. I can demonstrate better, right? I could go from grow more to earn better, right? Today, we are thinking that India should be placed into a third position of GDP, right? If that's the case, earn should be a better, right? So with all of this betterment, we should be able to reach to that better earn scenarios, right? So globally, we will be able to recognize what the digital system, what giving me more visibility to it, right? But all of this sustainability plays a major role. Not a sustainability just to an economical level, sustainability at the ecological level is also very important to it, right? So how does this really happen, right? So sustainability from optional to non-negotiable scenarios. So where I need to protect my climate, protect my biodiversity. Not humans just live on the earth. So there are n number of species that lives beside to humans on the earth. We all need to protect, right? So that they in turn help us to be protected, right? So that's a very important thing that we all need to understand at the ground level. What is really happening at all at the ground level? So I think today we hear a lot about what I call a Delhi air pollution, right? We have no idea a few years back that due to the stubble burning in the Punjab Haryana region, right, it used to cause the air pollutant in the Delhi city, right? So until unless we don't really investigate into it, right, even till today we don't have a clear picture how many of those farmers are still burning the stubs on the platform or on their crops, right? So this is where our digital technology plays a role, right? So central government has invested a lot of what I call infrastructure building on it. They call it as AgriStack, right? AgriStack is an open platform, something like an other scenarios, where they just allow a farmer to register himself with his farm areas and the crop that he grows it out there, right? So those is still in what I call initial stages. If those repository databases could be utilized to draw these informations, who is growing the what crop, and after the crop harvest, what is he doing with his stubbles? What is he doing with his residues? Right? So that is where sustainability plays a role. After harvest, what is the things happening out of the plot? Right? So to have this gauge, we need a technology. And today is a faster world, speedier world. We have to scale up very fast, right? Scaling up fast is all that not easy. We have to use a digital system. We have millions of data, right? There's millions of data needs to be analyzed faster, and the decision has to be drawn very quicker, right? So something like this, every parliament's what I call season meets. There should be something that should be going into the their checklist to discuss it out about the improvements. I think further the next parliament is going to happen it out in the month of winters, right? So now the parliament is going on for a rainy season, right? So the rainy season would have got something changes or more additions with respect to the agriculture there, right? Those has to be discussed in the way what are called rainy season parliament sessions. Those which has to be discussed also need to be available for all of our parliament members, right? So that's the way that scale and speed we have to be there, right? So hence, digital and sustainability has to move hand in hand together, right? It's a living planet. We can't really wait something to happen it out with a magical scenarios. It is we who bring back our data, analyze it out, bring the right decisions to the platform, take the call at the what I call nation level, and then try to disperse it out. Right? So that is a very well scenario what we need to do it out. And it's not just owning the responsibility. Now there is also what I call new market that is establishing it out for agriculture and the main stakeholder farmer. Farmer now need not just look as one more what I call way of earning with his what I call agricultural practices. They can earn the alternative incomes with the new marketing that is emerging around there, right? That is nothing but a carbon. So carbon, when it is accumulated or what I call sequestered into our crops, crop gives me an yield that goes for consumption. The crops also yields me some of the residues, which I can utilize. I can freeze that or froze that to a carbon main level or the finest level of carbon scenario back to the what I call soil, right? So wherever the carbon came from, we can restore that carbon back to the climate, right? And this earns a lot of money. Nowadays, I think what I call governments, in many agencies, especially with industrial businesses who is emitting a lot of carbon dioxide to a system, are being mandated to absorb their carbon dioxide what they are emitting into a system, right? So hence they can't do the carbon sequestration directly in their factories. Hence they rely on to the farmer scenarios. If an agriculture can practice a better carbon sequestration and the what I call capturing it out back from the climate to the soil back, right? So that could really earn one more alternative income for the farmers. Carbon is itself another that needs to be or can be taken up as a big discussion and could be shared as a knowledge to the new learners, right? Even for other farmers for the matter, right? So I'll just, in the interest of a time, I'll just move on to the further future opportunities in agriculture scenarios, digital agriculture.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
We have completed 45 minutes, sir. If you can wind up in another 2-3 minutes, I will take a few questions, sir.
Sure.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Please.
Yeah. So, right. This is a digital opportunities I'll not talk about. I think this is mostly the same things. Then coming to challenges is obviously all the supply chain will have their own challenges. Digital literacy, fragmentation of farms, data ownerships, farmer trust, adoption of the cost, right? So cost is always there with every adoptions and capacity building. This all has to happen out with the community coming together and making the possibilities operate out there, right? So now with the what I call India putting it out, it's what I call larger goal, Viksit Bharat, right? 2047. How do we really ensure that sustainability, carbon and traceability, what I call this is the overall scenario for the Indian scenario, right? And then moving forward, what is that there? People, not a replacement. Technology will not replace the people, but it has to be there to rebuild the whole supply chain, right? Sustainability has to be created for a value. Data becomes an asset. Technology will simplify the processes, and farmer will be the center of scenarios, right? So next, agriculture will seeds or machineries. It will be by a data, right? The data that farmer can build the stories while he's selling it to these consumers. This is what the overall scenario. I think that is what I just want to end with it. The session is open for any question.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful presentation. I'll take up the questions now. In the meantime, can you please stop sharing the screen, sir?
Sure, right.
And is it possible to on your video, sir?
Yeah, right.
Or still you are having network issue?
No, I can.
Okay. If there is any issue, you can switch it off, sir. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
no.
I'll move to the questions now. The first question is, what are the major challenges in implementing digital traceability?
Sorry, you went on mute. Oh, right. Can you repeat your question, please?
I repeat the question, sir. What are the major What are the major challenges in implementing digital traceability in India?
I think, as I said, right? So happens out with a different stakeholders on agriculture supply chain. The first stakeholder would be a farmer, right? Himself, right? His digital literacies, and his smartphone usage, right, all plays a major role in that, right? And FPOs, being a farmer community, I think they will be able to organize the meetings, bring their farmers, or they can own some what are called smart guys, right, who can be employed in an FPO, right, who will be on behalf of farmer farm activities and things, right? That's the first level of challenge of implementing, right? And then will be the FPO out on a day-to-day basis out. Doing the regular business along with this data inputs, that would really be a very important thing that someone has to follow it on a religious level. But FPO being driven by various other what we call proponents and propositions, they will get diluted over there, right? But you need to have a strong person at the FPO level, right? Or any organization who is trying to bring the digital traceability into the farmer community. They have to have one particular leader who could drive this traceability on their system. Apart from that, you will not have technology-wise challenges would be data accessibility. Maybe in a remote locations, you will have challenges of internet unavailable, right? But our application also works in an offline mode that will solve your purpose. You go in the remote locations, capture the data, and come back, and then sync those data to a server. That is a possible scenario.
Okay. Sir, how can technology help FPOs improve market access and secure better price?
All right. Yes. Technology, as I said, it's an enabler for any what I call organization, not just for an FPO. FPO being a what I call farmer-driven companies, they will have more visibility. So maybe one example, what I said, Apple, whatever I showcased the case study, right? Until unless we implemented our what called traceability system in their FPO, right? They had no clue which farmer gave them how much of commodity in the previous season. But this season, they know that, oh, this farmer owned what call 20 canal area, right? He just only gave me what call 10 canal cup produce. He didn't give me another 10. Where did he sell that? That is the where it could drive it out. And then if you can understand, oh, the farmer was only giving me 50% of what is harvest. That is another way where a FPO can understand, I need to bargain with my FPO or a farmer, then I get his whole commodity next season and sell that in a premier market, right? And that's a one way, right? And showcasing these compliances, right? He has sprayed how much of what are called pesticides, how much of water, and the things, right? So you'll be able to connect to the larger buyers, something like big FMCGs who wanted to buy your commodity, right? With the compliances and sustainability, right? They would really pay you a premium, right? So this is where I've been working with one of the commodity buyers, big case, where they deal with the spices, right? Spices is the one that goes to an export, and then they buy from all this Rajasthan and Barber region with a premium price, 10 rupees more than a market scenario. So those are the way where your digital traceability can fetch you more market and get an access to the connects in the market. Hope that answers. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, how can one second, sir. Sir, how does real-time data improve decision making across agricultural supply chain?
Right. Real-time data, yes. As I have to cite you once again the use case. Real-time data would be something like your rain patterns of season, right? Or it could be with respect to pest incidents predictions, right? For the matter, I think I'll just give you one example with our existing client. They use one of the particular feature called alert management, right? Alert management is a particular feature where their field scout, right, who is on regular scout with what are called farmers and his fields and crop service, finds out a particular pest incidence in one particular geography, right? And as soon as he finds that, he just sends that message to his supervisor, who is or a cluster supervisor, saying that there is a pest incident in particular plot, right? So that information, which is a real-time information, intimates the supervisor for that geography, and geographical supervisor takes a call what precautions geography so that we don't face the losses due to the pest incidents. That's a real-time data that gives him an instance where he could take a decisions and mitigate those what are called risk further on the spot, right? And this not just ends up here. When you just present this particular risk mitigation process to your prospective buyers, that there was an incident, as well as the incidents occurred in particular farm plot, I took the so and so measure, which is within the prescribed limits of the benchmarks, right? I have produced my what you call commodity with less of pesticide, with more of what you call preventive measures than the what you call correction measures. Right? So that really showcases to your buyers and the best decision makers in the real time scenarios. So these are realities that has happened out in our customers, and this is where the other who will adopt the technologies can also try to rely on. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, sir. I'll move on to the next question. Are consumers willing to pay more for products with verified prices? Hello? Sir, you got my
Yeah.
point?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Hello?
Yeah, hello. Can you repeat your question,
Are
please?
consumers willing to pay more for products with verified traceability? Yes, sir. Are
All right.
consumers willing to pay more for products?
Right, I got your question. Right. That's a
Got
tricky
my
question and
Yes,
what
sir.
I
Please
call
proceed.
a very difficult question to answer about that. Right. Um, it all depends upon the brand, right? So consumer rely on a brand, right? So if I am the consumer, I just go to a market and then I only buy those premier branded scenario. When the brand sells me a story of the commodity, right? I know what is he selling is real, and I rely on his storyline, and then I pay a premium for it, right? So maybe I may be paying it out. Maybe consumer comes in a various categories, right? They come with their own thresholds of paying it out and buying it out the commodities, right? And that is where what I call sellers also need to understand what is their consumer looking it out for. Are they going to pay me a premium if I want to tell the stories that is interesting to them and sustainable to what I call the planet, right? If those type of knowledges can be transferred to the consumers and their decision makings, obviously consumer will pay a premium to it. So, for an example, with my customer who is using the traceability system and establishing the traceability in the market, yes, they are having a very well sales happening it out on the ground. They have already established their brand, right? And their customers are all booked for it. They regularly buy it out and regularly work on it, right? So then in that case, customer will be paying to what are called premium prices for the host commodity which has a traceability.
Sir, what certification can be supported through digital traceability systems?
Right. Well, there is a two ways of certification that can be what are called provisioned on traceability. One is self-certification. The other one is a government agency providing the certification, validation and certification, or the third-party private parties providing the certifications. Right. Self-certification is something that the farmer himself can say that I have what I call applied and followed such and so practices, right? With the supporting bills and videos and photos, right? That is the one way of self-certifications, right? Where FPO can go through it. Or if FPO is an organic certified practicing scenarios, they could apply for agencies. APEDA is a one type of agencies. or there are a number of third-party private service agencies who will evaluate you for an organic certifications, right? And they will give you a certificate based on the stage of evaluations. Organic comes with 3 stages: year 1, year 2, and year 3. At the 3rd year, you are completely certified as an organic, right? Those all comes with a certified copies acknowledged by the agencies that are being authorized to do that, right? So this can be certified, can be uploaded onto a digital system and then showcased during the traceability to your consumers or buyers. Right? So this is the certifications that is available on the market.
Okay. Sir, how much training is typically required for farmers to use these technologies effectively?
Training, I hope they would at least need 2 or 3 handholding sessions. And handholding sessions, we say it would be of 30 minutes, right? Where we take them through the applications, the logic of using, how it has to be, and the so on so scenarios, right? So that is the where we will be able to work on it. So 3 sessions at least they would need it out there.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. We have now completed the round of questions on behalf of agricultureinformation.com. I would like to thank Mr. Raghava for the talk and for answering the questions. This meeting is now be closed.
Thank you.
Most welcome, sir.